Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and our guest today is Thomas Jefferson. In 1776 on Broadway, none other than Elizabeth A. Davis. Yes, of course, she plays Thomas Jefferson in the show right now, which is, of course, all over the headlines for many, many good reasons. You can take the lady out of the small town, but you can't take the small town out of the lady. She's a Texan that still performs to this day to pay homage to her grandparents and great-grandparents who, as she tells the story, paved the way for her and her family today. Speaking of family, I am so proud to see that she's performing 8 times a week now at being 7 months pregnant. The show is scheduled to close right around her due date. And often we've heard on this podcast that women have a hard time making a choice between starting a family or even continuing their family and continuing to perform. And the producers of 1776 never batted an eye. They were like, great, you're pregnant. Keep on going. Doesn't affect the story. So kudos there where kudos are due. Find me online on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and Facebook and the web. You know, I'm all over the place. Leave a rating and review wherever you're listening now if you can. And everybody, please enjoy this episode with Elizabeth A. Davis.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest received a Tony Award nomination for originating the role of Reza in the Broadway production of Once. Aside from her over 30 off-Broadway credits, she's a multi-talented, multi-hyphenate who's ironically now had 2 back-to-back Broadway credits where her character both sings and plays the violin on stage. She's written original musicals, short plays, sung on Ben Platt's album Sing to Me Instead, and even has TV credits that include Blue Bloods, The Jim Gaffigan Show, Fringe, and Law & Order SVU. She can now be seen playing Thomas Jefferson in the reimagined revival of 1776. Elizabeth A. Davis, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
How are you feeling? I guess the baby elephant in the room is that you are many months pregnant.
Yeah, I had my 8-month appointment this morning after I dropped my 5-year-old off. Yeah.
Wow, 8 months and you're on stage performing 8 shows a week while being 8 months pregnant?
Yeah, I just have this image of me like having a cigar dangling out of one side of my mouth and wearing a muumuu and just like walking and be like, Mama's here, kids, let's do another show. I'm just going to keep showing up till my body says no. That's it.
That's going to be a really cool story one day for your child if you're like, Mama's water broke in the middle of a Sunday matinee. Do you all have a contingency plan for this? Like, because you're going to be running through your due date, I suspect.
Yes, I'm due January 1st. The show is set to close January 9th. And I was a week late with my son.
Yeah.
It's a hoot. It's really a hoot. The metaphor does not escape me. It has never escaped me. I just didn't think it was going to. I didn't think I would be living the metaphor that I knew would be profound, but here we are. So yeah, it's not easy. I didn't really know definitively. I thought I had an ulcer. I think I went to the doctor July 5th. I found out definitively on July 21st in Boston. We closed July 24th. So I did the entirety of my first trimester and into my second trimester rehearsals and performance at ART, just thinking I was, getting a little tight in the pants and that I had an ulcer.
Wow.
I take none of this for granted for real because there's so many layers and levels. There's the financial component. There is the human component. There is the component of how we expect pregnancy to look. There's just so many landmines around the whole thing. But at the end of the day, what I'm finding is that I was hired to do a job, and I am showing up to do my job. And I just happen to be amongst a wonderful company and creatives and designers and stage management and all of that have supported me unequivocally. So all I can say is thank you. It's just a wild story.
I was so happy, and I guess like overjoyed is not the right word. I was just pleasantly surprised when I saw the show a couple weeks ago to see you on stage, full Jefferson outfit. You're all playing men up there, but the part of the point of the I guess the gender blind casting, we'll call it, and color blind, is that you're up there representing the voices of the nation that still went unrepresented during the whole process of declaring independence and whatnot. So twofold, right? Like you're literally up there representing motherhood and mothers, and while birthing a nation, while cooking your own egg, and all of these roundabout metaphors. Hey, roundabout, see what I did there? Didn't mean to do that. Unintentional pun. So yeah, you've got all of this up there, all these voices, or these unsung voices that you're representing, and while at the same time, as Elizabeth, you're representing actual actors, actual mothers who typically can't find work in it while they're pregnant, or don't want to work while they're pregnant or afterwards, because it's just freaking hard to maintain 8 shows a week and breastfeed and miss your little one's elementary school everything's, right?
Yeah. It's a really impossible line to walk. And look, I'm not going to say that it's hard. It's hard. It will be hard. This is a very extraordinarily unique situation that was born out of, no pun intended, but born out of a lot of pain, and it happens to just be in a production that happens to be cast in such a way that allows my body to look how my body looks right now. And that is not the case very often. And so I acknowledge that while I do want it to be representative of what I think can change and be different in the industry, I also understand that there is a superlative quality about it. There is a uniqueness to time and place and specific show and specific type of casting, etc. But there's also there's no maternity leave because, I was in 2 different states doing the show, and New York State doesn't, so should there be maternity? I don't know. So there's the financial component. There's all of these very real logistical threads that are going around this whole scenario for me. But at the center, the yolk of the egg of it is the beauty that I get to be in this body and be telling this story and feeling the profundity of these metaphors upon metaphors. And it's the most profound creative moment of my life, I would like to say. Yeah.
Well, in addition to carrying around another living being inside of you, you're also carrying around a violin, and of course you played the violin in Once as well. When did you start playing, or I guess, is violin the only instrument you play, and when did you start playing that, as a child? I guess I assume everybody who's good as an adult had to start as a child.
I started on a butter box with a ruler in it at 3. And a dowel rod for the bow with an eraser at the end as the frog. I did start as a child, and I was I grew up in the panhandle of Texas, where our population is 362, I think, on our population sign still to this day. My parents still live in the house I grew up in. My brother and his family live about an hour away. It was a discipline. It was a very important part of all of of my family's life. Music was interwoven into pretty much everything. And so, I played not because I had any inkling that this would be my trajectory, but I played for the love of it eventually, and I played for the discipline of it. And so to find myself first and once, with all of the things that I love to do coming together in such a way, yeah, that was the first moment of real synthesis, creative synthesis, where I thought, I think that I'm in the middle of a genre creation. I say that, but John Doyle, who I have to shout out, is like I call him a creative father. I did Allegro with him and played the violin in Allegro after I did once. And John Doyle, I have to say, created, in our modern understanding of it, actor musicianship. Margaret Thatcher cut arts funding when he was working in Scotland, the European Union. Or was it then at that time? I don't know. Don't put me on my governmental structural understanding. But John said, how am I going to continue to do my work without arts funding that Margaret Thatcher's just cut? And hence, I think we got Sweeney Todd. Was that first? Was that his first production that he brought over? Or was it?
I have no clue.
My point being, shout out to John Doyle, and then shout out to John Tiffany and the producers that made that possible. So that was extraordinary and so singular. But this show is different in that it's, I'm not the orchestra. There is a pit violinist who's fantastic, and I love her. Our orchestra is amazing. Ryan Cantwell, our MD, amazing. David Chase, the whole 9 yards, the whole gang, love them. But this is woven into the narrative. Jefferson historically played the violin very well, and the pieces that I'm playing on stage were pieces that Jefferson himself played. So
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then Martha has the whole song, He Plays the Violin, obviously originated by Betty Buckley, who also has my heart, played currently by McElroy. So yeah, it's a different type of, it's not diegetic, as we say. It is true musical theater, even though people are considering this show a play with music, but I digress.
So the casting, the original casting of the show, when they were, I guess, so the character description for Jefferson, it calls for an actor who can play the violin, and then I guess going back to once as well, was that cast looking for musicians who can sing or singer actors who can also play instruments?
I'll answer the once question first. John Tiffany was very specific that he wanted actors first who also played instruments very well. And I think that was a huge part of what made that cast so unique and specific, is that you had a bunch of actors who just happened to be, who started playing a butterbox at 3. And that was all of us. So John wanted actors who played. In this scenario, I don't think Jefferson doesn't have to play the violin at all. That's certainly not part of the description of the role. I just think Diane and Jeffrey knew that I played and thought, oh, that would be a bonus. And indeed, I personally find it a bonus. I find it a fun bonus that I get to do that every night.
It's a beautiful violin too. It's absolutely, before I could see it, just the lights and the color, and it's a deep, this very, very pretty violin. I played for a year in 3rd grade. I couldn't play a lick right now, but I can at least appreciate a good instrument when I see one. So I'm like, oh wow, that's really pretty.
It's an instrument they found that can be acoustic and electric, because I use it acoustically in Act 1 and then electrically in Act 2.
That's cool. I love technology, especially when it merges with the arts. That's a lot of fun. We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. So you said you started with the butterbox. You started with all this when you were 3. So where did it grow from there? Because you're in the middle of this tiny town in Texas playing instruments, and then did singing come next? Did acting come next? And then progressing up through there, what was your moment where you said, I have to do this for my life? This needs to be who I am, or this is who I am. I've just discovered me.
Well, I have to always pay homage to my parents, because they, my dad was a vocal performance major. My parents met in a singing group. My mom and my dad both play the piano somewhat, and they also directed the high school theater production. When you come from a tiny town, You're on the cross country team. You run track. You do poetry interpretation. You do the one act play, and you also barrel race. So that was just normal life, that everyone did everything in order to create teams. And because we're in Texas, everything was a competition. Not because we're in Texas, but Texas has like very competitive extracurricular activities. So everything just overlapped. It was a constant overlapping of like, oh, I'm 5 and I'm sitting on the steps of this tiny little this theater in our school where my parents are directing Steel Magnolias. And then on Thursday, I'm going to go to violin lessons. And then daddy is singing for church. And we're all like, so all of the components that I'm bringing, I guess, to my work now were always part of the ingredients of our family soup. Then when it came time to, figure out how to make anything out of that, to make a sustenance of a life, I pursued theater because I wasn't good enough. In my mind, I wasn't a good enough violinist or a vocalist to major in those. But looking back, I knew that I was a storyteller. And so I got both of my degrees in classical theater performance. I got my bachelor's and my master's. I never thought I would do a musical theater production, ever. Singing still terrifies me on stage. But I love to sing, and I write music, I record music, all of this. I found my way into feeling comfortable in singing when once allowed a voice to be what it was. Once said, Glenn Hansard is going to get up and squelch and let the pure, just rawness of the human voice ring out. And we're gonna say yes to that. And so there's such freedom in saying, yes, there is something gorgeous about perfection in the singing voice. But why do we love Dylan? Why do we love Springsteen? Why do we love Glenn Hansard? Why do we love Bonnie Raitt? Why do we love? Because their heart comes out of their voice. We don't listen to them for technical perfection. We listen to them because they are telling the story of life when they open their mouth to sing. And discovering my version of that is what lets me sing and feel confident in that. And saying, oh, I'm going to screw up. I don't care. That means it's live. That means you're hearing the real me. Oh, well.
Embrace what makes you different. We say it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And people come to the theater to see something real and different and alive. They, of course, come to the theater also to see extraordinary skill and brilliance. And we have plenty of that on our stage as well. But I guess to just go back and answer your question about tying everything together, that's when the vocal piece really came into play.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And I think it's refreshing a little bit to realize too that you have people at the top of their game. I say this all the time in these episodes, is that Broadway performers are the Olympians of theater. They're the top of the game. You've reached like the ultimate of competition, if you want to, the ultimate pinnacle of the performance. And it's refreshing to know that people still get stressed. Like these people doing shows 8 times a week, they still get nervous about auditions. They get stressed about singing. They go up on their lines after doing it, for a year and a half. Like all of this stuff, everyone is human and everyone is unique in their humanity, which I think, again, it speaks to why I love this production of 1776 so much, because the cast is so diverse and different, and we're all representing one nation. We're all representing one movement. Or you, not we. I'm not a part of the cast. You are all representing, of course, this movement, the individual people. But it's really cool to me to see the choices that were made to put you and all the rest of the phenomenal cast together to represent this one particular moment in time. And I guess I don't have a question there. I was just making an observation. But my question then would be, when did you know about the production before you auditioned for it and before you really started getting involved? Because
I auditioned for this like old school style through my agent. I found out, I think the first full day that I knew I was cast was January 1st of 2020, which, by the way, it's so interesting. My child is due on January 1st of 2023. So, I mean, I didn't know much. I knew that I didn't know much. That's the real answer. I had never seen a production of 1776. My father apparently was in a production in college in 1776, which seems to be like, I'm finding all these people that I peripherally know, and they're like, oh, I did a production of that. Oh, yeah, I did that. The first time I listened, I watched the movie and I listened to the score, and I was struck by how funny it was. And I was struck by how the creatives, the writers were dealing, they used comedy so deftly to kind of take the air out or to release the pressure valve on major contention and sticking points. So I respected that a lot. And I got excited about being in the middle of walking that line.
I guess looking at all of the original founding fathers being the key word there, being men, right?
Yeah.
Were there any of these characters, of these real life people that you were drawn to initially, of like, that's a really interesting story, or there's so much I didn't know about these particular people? Because just your character arc in general, the Jefferson story alone is phenomenal. And then the conflict over the clause about abolishing slavery that Rutledge wanted to, or had successfully removed from the final draft, or from the final version. Like, all of this, it just fascinated me because I didn't know any of it. It was in like my North Carolina public school upbringing. It was, there's like some tea that got thrown in the ocean, and then we said, "No, screw you, England, we're out." A couple people fought some battles, and that was it. And then I really got to know the real history, I put in air quotes, because of Hamilton, because Hamilton then teaches you everything. But that's like, right. And so that's like years before and years after. But I love 1776. I love this because this show is like the months leading up to July 4th, 1776. Yeah. And the drama and the drive, the need for these kids. I'm a day older than you, so you and I can call them kids. A lot of them were kids.
They were.
Especially Jefferson, who was what, 27, 28? What was he?
33 at least. I mean, I say that only because there's a line in the show, for a man of only 33 years old, you possess whatever John Adams' line is. It calls me 33. And I always, every night I get a kick out of it. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Of course, I'm 33. I get called like a young lover, and like it's so funny. And I'm standing up there again with a cigar hanging out my mouth, being like, "You kids, blah blah blah." The history is unbelievable, and it's like you and I are, people can't see obviously, but you and I both holding our voting stickers right now because we've both voted today. And after reading extensively about, let's just go straight to the 1800 presidential election between Jefferson and Adams, where partisanship was actually introduced into the, political zeitgeist. Jefferson was like, no, if you come in second, you can't. No, I don't want you as my I don't want you as my vice president. The contention between Jefferson and Adams is considered one of the, most heated presidential elections ever. They didn't speak for years after that. And I always take being inside the show, being inside the history, being inside Jefferson's track as encouragement to say it's always been insane. There have and also reading Thomas Paine's Common Sense. That's what I'm reading on stage during scene 3. I sit there and I read and reread over and over Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which is considered the inciting document that gave the colonies the courage to say, okay, we're actually ready to do this. And I find so much courage. And I also, again, people can't see, but I have these 2 notebooks that I filled during the Boston production, sitting in scene 3, writing about congressional madness. And I have a document that I do. I have a document called the Congressional Chronicles, where I wrote about what I was witnessing as Jefferson in scene 3. But obviously, it's also Elizabeth writing about what she's experiencing in 2022 America. And so I hesitate to take any time to just find this, but I was so tickled getting to put these together. Oh, I wrote this on stage, and I believe this applies right now as much as it did then. The sun shines with earnest work ethic. The moon waxes with precocious swoon. And the men in this congressional sweatbox foghorn with volume so as to convert the citizens of planet Mars. And just, the ideas such as that of like nothing has changed. Like we're watching people foghorn in our congressional sweatboxes as to convert, literally, along with Elon, the citizens of planet Mars. So there is great courage to be had in that humanity does not change. The circumstances around humanity just does. And that may cause people to be cynical. It may depress them. I find it encouraging because it means that the trajectory of growth and learning can be pretty tried and true if people are willing to commit to it. And this is a very long-winded way of saying Jefferson, despite all of his inconsistencies and all of his inabilities to see his mistakes, or I'll regret that, his inability to change his mistakes, I think he was quite aware of them. I think he knew that slavery was wrong. I read the clause every night, calling it an execrable commerce. Yeah, he knew. But his daughter knew that he knew it was at least a generation or 2 away from him being able for us to abolish it, truly.
I mean, how much of this history did you already know? And how much did you learn? I guess joining the cast, were you all given the real history lessons, or did you take it upon yourself to learn all of this? I'm always curious how much the production team requires their cast to really like dig into the past of these real characters sometimes.
It was both. I mean, we were in the middle of the pandemic, knowing that we were cast as these roles. So we had the freedom of time to do an extraordinary amount of research if we so chose. But we also were gifted kind of the arsenal of Harvard's historian department through Diane Paulus and through Jeffrey Page. So we had these guests that would just either zoom in or physically show up who are Pulitzer Prize winners in their field. We had Pulitzer Prize winner Annette Gordon-Reed, who is a scholar of Thomas Jefferson. Like that is her life's work, is Jefferson and uncovering a lot of the Sally Hemings history. So I'm listening to this woman talk. Like I still I think about Alan Rickman and Annette Gordon-Reed the same way. They both give me chills. So there was a lot made available to us, and there was a lot that was put on the emphasis of the true understanding of the history, and an emphasis on saying we're not interested in deifying or demonizing. We're interested, as art does, creating characterizations of people and making them imperfect and making them human. And that's what I hope people see when they come to watch the show. I hope that they don't, no. Our aim is not to preach. Our aim is simply to hold a mirror. And I think the production does a good job of that.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. It's a country founded on conflict. I mean, we rose out of conflict to overcome conflict, to then establish a system that perpetuates conflict. And here we are. But all in all, like you said, shining up a mirror, that's the best thing I think that you can do in any situation, because it's self-improvement. And exactly what you were saying about Jefferson, he knew he wasn't perfect, and he worked to improve himself. And I think, it could be the modern day, or now the modern version is like, you're going to therapy and you realize that you have work to do, and you're not perfect, and you've got blind spots in your way of thinking, your unconscious biases because of societal influence, because of generational blah, 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 blah. Like, you could trace it all the way back. And this is part of why I love Broadway and love theater and love the arts so damn much, because it allows you to just open up. It opens up your mind as an audience member, and then even like you and your cast as performers, how much better of a person, how much more, I guess, aware of things are you now as a person, as Elizabeth, than you were previously. And now you can take that into your next roles and teach your children and go pay this forward in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise. I think it's a fascinating cycle.
Oh, that's so well said. And I absolutely agree. I'm a significantly better citizen than I was 2.5 some years ago. I'm a better citizen. I hope I'm a better artist. And to your point, I hope that I'm a better mother. There is something profound about being able to put yourself on a continuum, being able to imagine your children on a continuum, as opposed to fixed points. And yeah, I don't know how to exactly say, but I think children thrive and do better obviously when there's a growth mindset, when there's a sense that they are not the center of the universe. It's unhealthy for a child, for a human.
That's hard. It's hard to get them to see that.
Right, exactly. But exposure to history and exposure to similar struggles at different time periods and in different countries, like any of that exposure allows a child, I think, to feel strengthened, but also keenly aware of the fact that they are a small part of human history.
Well, everybody is, whether they want to be or not. And that's something too that, people have asked before. They're like, what do you hope that you leave behind? And it's just legacy. And that's why, gosh, I mean, look at it again. I take Hamilton and 1776 and in every show about a period piece, historical moment, everyone at the crux of it wants to leave their legacy. Why do you think that is? Now that I brought that up, like, why is that? Why do you think as a species we just want to, we're afraid to be forgotten? Out of 7 billion people, of course, some people are not going to rise to the top. It's kind of a shitty thing to say, but it's the truth.
No, I think we are all created to desire higher meaning. We are all in search of saying, I intrinsically feel or understand that I'm more than myself. How do I reach that? How do I surpass my own humanity? Yeah, I mean, look, I am a person of faith, and I've been able to take my art and my understanding of my purpose on planet Earth and through the continuum of time and soul and spirit, and say, I do believe that we are created for more than just the end of our lives, that there is legacy built into our DNA. There's a desire for, I call it, continuum. I wrote this play called Home Entropic, an entropy meaning, everything falls toward chaos, and how if left to our own brokenness, we fall toward entropy. And the fight of redemption defies that. And so for me, that's the legacy and the meaning that I long to leave. to say my humanness is not the end of what I aimed to portray. Or said differently, which that was deeply convoluted. There is continuance in every role I play. What acting is incarnational, meaning we take something that is without flesh and we put spirit and flesh into something that's simply on the page. Mm-hmm. We incarnate it. And so for me, the act of acting is a total defiance of death. It is an absolute defiance of entropy. To be able to step into something and to breathe life into something and to allow it to be alive in your face for however long. And so there's purpose and drive and meaning in that, which is why, I'm exhausted. I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm exhausted. And still purpose and continuance and meaning calls to me. And so I keep showing up. Community calls to me. Being part of a whole calls to me. Mm-hmm. Anyway, please stop me from my pontification.
No, I absolutely resonate with what you just said about the act of acting incarnates, and I think you said transcends death or cheats death. I forget what you said exactly, but that puts so much of people's need to perform and express themselves and leave that legacy. That I think just puts a pin in that so well in a way that I'd never actually considered before. So thank you for that little tidbit. I'm going to go to bed tonight thinking about that. But I would love to wrap up the episode here with 3 closing questions I ask everybody to end the episodes. And you may have just answered the first one already, but the first one just is very simply what motivates you.
My grandparents worked on a farm for 50 years of their life and saved enough money to send me to college. I stand on their shoulders. I stand on the shoulders of my great-grandfather, who was a doctor in Scotland, crossed through Ellis Island. There have been so many people in my history who have sacrificed, and I bring the same ethic, drive, and passion to my job as an actor that my grandfather did when he was farming untilled dirt in the panhandle of Texas. And my grandmother, who cooked 3 meals a day for cowboys as they were trying to provide food for the United States of America. This is not just a hope and a wing and a prayer, or whatever the phrase is. This is a thank you. I aim to live my life as a thank you.
Wow. I love that. All right. Next question then. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
The biggest job I had at 30 years old was understudying off Broadway. I was 30 years old. I recently listened to Leslie Jordan on SNL talking about Oprah got fired at 25 or something. And the best thing that could have ever happened to Oprah at 25 was to be fired, because it's what made her Oprah.
Yeah.
And so I would tell young people that failure is your friend, and that it is not to be feared. It is to be welcomed as the teacher you must have to go to the next place. You are not a failure. If you refuse failure, you refuse growth. And we must uncouple identity, self-worth from work. We must uncouple them. They are not the same. If you allow them to be the same, you will be crushed by your work.
That is, again, another beautiful answer. Beautiful. I almost said beautiful. I don't say beautiful, but I almost did that time. All right. The last question. And this one is the hardest. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Show, musical, play, movie? Like, what are the parameters here?
I leave it very open.
Oh my gosh. The Boys Next Door. The Hallmark special with Nathan Lane. That's not even like, you can't even find it. I don't even know where to find it. I haven't even been able to find it on VHS. It's like, who else was in that? It's called The Boys Next Door. It was about a man who was helping a home of people who had a variety of, I think the correct term is disability, but his learning to live without them and their ability to live without him. And it just, I don't have words. It makes me feel all the things. I have no idea where people can find it. Good luck. If you find it, let me know. But I live high on the memory of it daily.
Okay, well, where can we find you online? That's a great transition to social media. Where can people send you all the info about where to find the missing mysterious movie?
Yeah, so my professional name is Elizabeth A. Davis, but Elizabeth A. Davis was already taken on Twitter and Instagram and the places. So it's just Elizabeth A. Davis without the H. So it looks like Elizabetta Davis. So Betty Buckley for a long time, I thought my name was Elizabetta. So don't let that fool you. But I mean, Betty can call me whatever she wants to.
She's Betty Buckley. She could call you, hey, you.
Exactly. Find me there. My website is deeply out of date, but Elizabeth A. Davis. And I don't know where else. I mean, my dream is to escape myself completely from the internet, or to remove myself from the internet. But in the meantime, I'm still on socials. So there you go.
Because we have to be. That's the game we play. All right. You can get more of me at thetheaterpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Leave a rating, leave a review, leave a comment wherever you're listening, watching, doing anything. This has been edited by Well-Rounded Hoodlum Productions. Our music that you're hearing now came from Jukebox the Ghost. And our conversation, of course, came from Elizabeth A. Davis. Elizabetta Davis. There. Elizabeth A. Davis. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.